Good morning, everyone. This is Jeanette Stanziano with the New York State Association of Counties. I'm the Director of Education and Training, and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for this important webinar entitled Foundations of County Government. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before we begin. We will be recording this program and posting it along with a PDF of the slide deck on NYSEC's website under webinars. You can find this posted later today, anytime after 12 o'clock. Also, we will have a Q&A portion of the program at the end of the presentation. We encourage you to submit questions at any time during the program. And the way that we ask you to submit them is by referring to the dashboard, clicking on the questions tab, and typing in your question. We will go through every submitted question at the end of the program. I would like to introduce your presenter for today. Patrick Cummings is NYSEC's counsel. I've had the pleasure of working with Pat for the past 10 years at NYSEC. Before he came on board with the NYSEC staff, Pat worked as an assistant county attorney in Schenectady County. He's an alum of Albany Law School, and he is a valued part of the NYSEC staff. I'd like to yield the floor now to Patrick to begin the presentation. Pat, the floor is yours.
Thanks much, Jeanette. As Jeanette mentioned, I'm Patrick Cummings. I'm counsel with NYSEC, and really thanks for coming out this morning. It looks like we've got 38 attendees. That's great. We'll cover a lot of basics and some, we're going to cover a lot of material, and you might have some questions during this. Please feel free to reach out, as Jeanette said, during the presentation. Also, if you have questions after, please reach out to us at NYSEC at any time. You can, I work today, I'm working from home. I'll give you my cell phone number right now. That's 518-698-6682, 518-698-6682. Call me if you ever have any questions about county organizations, county structures, or any kind of local law questions. I'm here to what we do and what I can provide for you with that service as being a member. So thank you so much for being members with us and joining us this morning. This presentation is called Foundations of County Government. So what do we mean by that? This is, as I said before, a broad overview of how New York County started and the state laws that govern and impact our New York County structure. Additionally, we're going to discuss the different forms of county government throughout the state and why each are set up that way. We've got 62 counties, 57 outside New York City. Each is a little unique and different, and that gets confusing. But there's a reason why. First, there's the ability to do this, and there's a reason why each is different to address the different needs and structures and demographics of each of their locations. Next, Jeanette. So let's start from the beginning. Let's go way back. Today we have 62 counties, but how did we get here? In 1665, New York's lands were divided into separate regions because the British powers sought to set law and control of the lands. The Duke's Law of 1665 created judicial districts, and later in 1683, the General Assembly of Freeholders, convened by Governor Dongan, passed the Charter of Liberties and Privileges. This created 12 counties and how they should be governed. This is actually hanging at NYSEC. That's Tom Clingan, who the picture you see in front of you. Tom Clingan was the county clerk of Albany County, had an original copy of the Dongan laws within their files, and they gave us a copy. It's pretty amazing to see. But that right in front of you laid out how the first 12 counties, the borders, and the basic structure of how they can be governed. Next. with these 12 counties, you can already see the basic structure. Each county had, they created at this time a sheriff to enforce the law. Sheriffs could also levy and collect taxes if needed be. Additionally, each county created a legislative body. At this time, they were freeholders that through the king's authority, they could create law. So much like, and we're going to talk about this later, we've got services such as police and safety protection already formed here that we carry forward today. But you already have a body of legislators that can control the boundaries of that county. And again, flash forward to today, we'll see that the similar structure. Next slide. So in 1777, a year after the Declaration of Independence, New York State ratified its first state constitution that recognized under its authority 12 separate counties. Actually, I'm sorry. Go one more, Jeanette. So this actually created 14 counties. I apologize, in the original state constitution. This also created our cities and towns within our county. Next slide. So what is the state constitution? We talk about it often, but what is it actually? It's a legal document. It's a legal authority that established the structure of New York State government. It lays out the basic rights of the citizens of New York. It's really similar to the U.S. Constitution, right? The federal Constitution. The difference being, obviously, it's controlling New York State. And this New York State Constitution, if you ever get a chance or already get a chance to read it, it's more detailed than the federal Constitution. But it's because it was created about the same time. A lot of the same principles and a lot of the same ideas are throughout, and its structure is actually pretty similar. Much like the federal Constitution, it is difficult to amend, and that's the important takeaway I think I want you to have today, is the difference when we're talking about this section, the difference between original authority with the state constitution versus we're going to talk about state law later. The state constitution is like a super law. It's much more difficult to amend and change than just by way of state legislative law. And this is going to be important for what we can and can't do within our counties, but this is also going to be important to show that the state would have difficult unilaterally, state legislature taking away certain powers that were given to us by the state constitution. So how can the state constitution be amended? Two ways. There's one way is what's called the Constitutional Convention. This is a question that comes up to the people in way of a referendum every 20 years, asking, do they want to open up, or do the people of New York want to open up the Constitution for certain changes? And if it's a majority vote says yes, we have a Constitutional Convention. This has not happened in quite some time. And part of the reason is it's not necessarily an open question. It's like we talked about, it's detailed, and there's a lot in the state constitution. So sometimes the answer is no, because the people maybe they want to change one part but not another. And the way the system works, the state legislature can put parameters on what we're going to open this up to within the convention to look at. And depending on what parameters they're putting in place is going to depend on the outcome of that vote. So while that one is rare, right, to happen, a more traditional form of amendment to the state constitution requires the state legislature to pass in two separate consecutive sessions the same piece of state legislation, same bill twice. They got to pass that by a majority vote. If they do so and state that this is an act that we're looking to change and ratify or add to the New York State Constitution, then it goes out to a vote of the people and then in the next upcoming November election to see if we're going to change the Constitution. We just saw this with 6 different issues that were passed in 2 consecutive legislative sessions, a lot dealing with election reform. The question that it was passed both by the state Senate and the state Assembly twice to, for example, pass no excuse absentee voting, right? Mail-in voting, to put that within the Constitution. Currently, due to the way the Constitution is written with election law, can only do absentee voting in pretty rare circumstances. You need to have actual proof that you'd be out of your county, out of the area, for a valid reason, that you wouldn't be able to make it on election day, or you need to be able to prove illness to a point or disability to a point that you can't make it to the polls. So we were looking, there was a proposal to change that, to strike that out of the state constitution and put in that to be able to, for any reason, to vote via mail. That failed by the people, right? So that that provision was voted down. I think 60% of the people voted to say no, we do not want that change made. And so what does that mean? It means that the Constitution remains. It also means that, as is on that area, it also means that if the legislature wants to pass this again, they need to do it again this session, and then again the following year after that, before they can put that back on the vote. Next. So the Constitution has 20 different articles within it. It's just the way it's organized, right? And it's almost like chapters in a book. Within the articles that you'll want to look at understanding county government is one, the Bill of Rights, and which lays out very similar to the United States Bill of Rights. And then more directly for us, there's something called Article 9 for local governments. And this provides, and under Article 9, there's a lot of protections and structure set up of powers, which is even called the local government Bill of Rights. And they're laid out here before you on the slide. So this isn't just law again, this is constitutional law. And so we're going to talk about the separation between the state and local government powers in a minute, but these are solid in constitutional law protections that you get to keep as a county official, whether or not the state legislature wants to change this or not. They wouldn't have the power to unilaterally stop this. Every local government shall have an elected legislative body. So all 57, all 62 counties, including New York City, they have it. That's why you have, it's within the state constitution, a legislative body that gets to create and enact laws and resolutions. No local government can be annexed without approval of the voters. So your borders are your borders. That's within state law. They cannot be taken away from you. You cannot be your governments, your towns, your cities, your counties, they cannot just be wiped off the map unless there's a mechanism for this. But there needs to be, the local governments need to approve, and then it needs to go to the voters by way of referendum that live in those areas to approve. The power to apportion costs for government service with, and this is an important part of this, with authorization of the legislature. So you have the power to tax, right? You have the power, and we do so with real property taxes, we do with sales taxes. And so because we provide so many services. However, we do need that authorization by the legislature. You'll see this quite often with sales tax authority. Most of our counties, not all of them, can go up to about 4 cents per dollar with sales tax. If we ever want to go to 4 cents or higher, we need to do something called a home rule request, and that is we need to go to the state legislature and say, this county would like 4.5 cents, let's say, or that is, we need authorization from the state legislature to increase those taxes, right? And then request the legislature to authorize establishment of different forms of county government. We'll go through that later, but there's going to be ways that you can change your county structure through a charter. You can also do it through alternative government laws, and then also there's certain ways that you could do through home rule. Make a request to change your forms. Next slide, Jenna. All offices not in the Constitution are appointed or elected. This is a big one. Next one, having the power of eminent domain. You have the power to seize land if need be for, and there's parameters around this, of course, but for good reason. If you need even private land, it can be taken. Now you have to go through a due process. You need to pay the landowner, but that you do have power of eminent domain. Local governments can act jointly as authorized by the legislature. So you each have your own functions. You do not have to take, let's say if you're a county, you do not have to take a city's powers and functions if they can't just be thrown at you if one stops. But you can jointly do services together, especially when authorized by the legislature. We often are seeing something, if you're newly elected on here, if you haven't heard this term, you're going to see it a lot. That's shared services and shared service incentives by the state. It's everything from snow plowing to even just together your towns and your counties to jail use, and if one county needs to use a pod or a jail from one to another, they can work together. You can have even computer and software purchases together. 911 services can act jointly with counties. We're seeing more EMT service joint work together with counties and towns. This is all under the general umbrella of your Bill of Rights for local governments. Next slide, Jenna. So this is another big takeaway I want you to have, though. So while there's a lot of protections from the state constitution, we want to let you also understand that it is the state that created counties. The state is sovereign. Counties are not. We do have protections within the Constitution and other laws, but ultimately, because they're sovereign powered, that with our authority stems in large part from the state and what they've granted with us, and within, and so therefore that's when you get the dreaded term, the unfunded mandates. It is often the state can tell us that they through legislative authority they want us to perform service X, and we fight at NISAC in large part to make sure if they're doing that they're paying for that. We need help, we need support, we need funding. That's why the budget process is so important. But that's a big always back and forth of these services are needed. These are what are deemed good ideas by the state legislature, but then how are we going to get them done? Oftentimes it's county feet on the ground, county services that are doing these, and in large part they can tell us to do that, and in large part and often they can say that through sales tax, through property tax authority, that they are not going to fund these programs. It's on us to be aware of this, educate the state, and let them know why this could hurt other services and why this is not fair to local taxpayers, and that we need a better system to support all the services we do. But they can put, unfortunately, oftentimes unfunded mandates on us. And it's where we really are, again, we're independent. I don't want to make it sound like we are soldiers of the state. That said, we mirror the state in so many ways. If you start to look at ours, go down department by department, you have a state counterpart that has not oversight, they have influence on us, and So, you know, we have a local health department. We've also obviously worked with them, and they did such a tremendous job and still doing such a tremendous job throughout COVID. Their counterpart is the state DOH, right? We have DSS that we run the state Medicaid programs. There's multiple state offices that interact and put regulations on how we're going to run our DSS programs. We have veteran offices, local veteran offices that work with both the federal and state offices. Real property tax deals with state ORPs all the time. It's the state has again, more of a management, I guess, for lack of a better term, kind of office that comes up with ideas and regulations, and we have the counterparts of the counties in large part on, and how are we going to get this done? So it's this back and forth with that. Now, it's not a, I don't want to make it sound like it's a boss employee relationship. There are within reason, they can tell us what we can and can't do. And one of the big things that, and we'll get to later in this, is we get to set up our own structure and in large part how we do these services and how we're going to function that. But then also I do want to point out, a lot of these mandates are state, both constitutional, if we go back to it, and federal constitutional obligations, and they can't force us, arguably, to do those without at least some kind of compensation or help and support to do so. So let's look at something like indigent defense services, right? It is a federal constitutional requirement that states provide counsel to those that are charged with crimes and can't afford counsel for themselves. The state, through legislation, put that on counties to perform in a public defender's office. You all have a public defender's office. If you know a public defender's office, you'll have something called an 18B office that can handle that, those functions. Over the years, we got less and less and less funding till we actually got sued in something called Harrell Herring a few years back. And the suit was saying, hey, counties, you are not doing a good enough job in this federally constitutional requirement. We brought in the state in the suit and said, maybe we are, maybe we're not. However, this is not our obligation. This is a state obligation. And ultimately, the court agreed with that the state needed, and the state who seemed to agree, and the court took the settlement. The state has funded indigent defense services to the tune of now $200 million more per year, in large part because the argument was, yes, they can tell us what to do, but if it's something that's supposed to be a state function, they should be at least giving us the tools to enact that. There's also in the Constitution, Article 9, Section 2, it prohibits the state from acting on property affairs or government of any local government unless the state passes a 2/3 supermajority vote to do so. What does that mean? It's a gray term. That's something, I don't want to get in the weeds on that, but if you ever get to that, can the state do that? Do we have Article 9 protection? Give me a call. Answer is the dreaded it depends. Next slide, Jeanette. Oh, and before I get to this, sorry, I've said so much on that. I did want to point out too, we'll talk about county positions and structures later. There are some constitutional officers that are county positions that are protected, and again would take a state constitutional change to ever get rid of them or change their function or powers or duties. That is one being your county clerk, your sheriff, your district attorney. These are in other, especially the district attorney in other states, that's usually a state function. Even your district attorney's papers will be filed saying the people of New York State, and it wouldn't be Westchester County bringing these charges. It's the people of New York State, but these are county in the state constitution. These are county positions, elected county positions, and would take a constitutional change to make it otherwise. in slide 12, that's when we're talking about the public employee pension system. So why do we put this in here? We want to make sure that you understand with all county officials, all county employees are within the pension system, and there's some constitutional protections, and there's also a lot of state law that deals with that. The state runs 4 different pension systems. The city of New York has its own. There's the state and local retirement system. There's the state, local police and fire, and there's the teachers retirement system. Most likely, most of you on this call and most of the people that work for your counties are going to be in bullet 2. You're going to be in the state and local retirement system. Through state law dependent, you'll be in one of those, one tier. I think tier 6 is the last tier that was changed, depending on when those start. But everyone is within the pension system, and there's constitutional protections that we'll talk about next slide, within the Constitution. What does this mean? This basically means once one is in, they're in. It's a earned benefit, a contractual relationship that can't be diminished, impaired, or taken away. So no legislative pen stroke can take one's pension away or pension rights away. It would take, again, an act, a constitutional vote. Now, this has happened recently, right? So there was in 2017 a constitutional amendment that passed. What passed? It allowed a judge, after a hearing, to reduce or revoke a pension to a public officer that is convicted, not charged, convicted of a felony that is related to his or her official duties. It's rare, but it can happen. And there's a mechanism for that. And I just wanted to kind of point out that there's protections of a pension, but there's ways that in certain fact patterns where it can be diminished now or impaired. Next slide. Okay, so we're getting out of the Constitution now. So that's your superpowers, right? And super hard to change and locked in. And so now there are, though, thousands and thousands and thousands of other state laws that are passed in a normal way. State legislature, Senate introduces, passes over to the Assembly, governor signs, becomes law. There are many of these that can impact your day-to-day life and function on a county level. And we just list a few here. I just want you to be aware of some laws that if you work in the county attorney's office, you come across these often because, oh, this is under this section of law that impacts that. A big one, civil service law. This is a state law that deals with your labor issues, how you can hire, how you can fire. A big one within civil service law, there's different sections within it, is something called the Public Employees Fair Employment Act, aka the Taylor Law. What is that? And again, that's a lot with what Taylor Law is, but it allows the right to unionize within New York State. It allows the right to negotiate. It prohibits striking from certain jobs and unions. The other flip to that, though, that while it prohibits striking, your CBAs, your collective bargaining agreements that you have with your unions, they have to hold even if they run out. So let's say the terms of your union CBA, they go until 2020. Well, now in good faith, you need to negotiate and come to a new agreement. The old language, it stays until you come to a new agreement. That's all under the Taylor Law, and there's exceptions to that too, but again, just know that for now. Election law, huge section of law on how we can conduct elections, what those that are going for when they need to set petitions, etc. But the counties run the elections on the most part. Some villages do some too, but I mean, it's a huge function that we do. It's all under New York State election law, really, how to do that. Eminent domain, we talked about, you have the right, but then it talks about the process. How do you do it? There's actually a little section within New York State law called eminent domain. Highway law, well, we run tens of thousands of miles for construction and maintenance between our towns and our county functions. And there's something called highway law that helps understand restrictions and what you can and can't do there. Next slide. Public officers law. This is a huge one that you'll be turning back and forth from for your meetings that you have quite often, right? So your official oaths, how is that done? When is it going to be done? For elected officials and for officers. The filling of vacancies. Now, a lot of this we can change within, we'll talk about county charters in a minute, but you know, this is done. The state law has parameters on how this can be done if you don't have something in your charter on filling vacancies, and some stuff like constitutional officers, you can't fill those vacancies even if your charter says so. That's going to be typically a governor appointment if you lose a constitutional officer. FOIL for your documents is governed under this, an open meetings law. Ton of questions on open meetings, how to run those. These are all going to be found in public officers law. Retirement Social Security law applies to counties as well as the state. Local finance law, what kind of bonds, what kind of debt you can get into. And tax law. So, you know, again, what we can and can't do for authorization of sales tax and use. Next slide. Here's three more, just real quick. You know, these are just functions for state law that we do often. DA's office deals with vehicle traffic all the time. Towns more and villages with volunteer firefighters, and then workers' comp law. Complex areas, but if there's different sections if you start to run into these issues. But I always just talk to your county attorney, please. But these are places in state law that will keep coming back to counties. Next slide. So the Consolidated Laws as a title is probably, I should probably change this one. But all those are Consolidated Laws. So what we mean by that is the ones before that. Is you know, whenever the state passes a law, they really just call it like the law of 2021. Excuse me, got a drink. Chapter 12, and then it needs to be, and it just does what the state law says it does, and then it needs to be later on consolidated into state law in different sections. Excuse me, I'm just going to clear my throat. I'll push mute not to. There, much better. Anyway, so it just, all we're really saying by Consolidated Laws is it puts it in the chapters of that book of an organizational form, and so where you can find these after they're passed by the state. General municipal law is another big one just to know of, and that's you know, how the maintenance of reserve funds, how much you can do, how much you should be doing, your public bidding requirements, how you can purchase, what needs to go out to bid, big things there. IDAs, when you set them up, every county's got an IDA. The structure of them would be found under general municipal law. Next slide. So these are also consolidated laws, county law and municipal home rule law, but like those other ones are all, you know, tangentially, you might find them when you're working on those issues. These two are really get to the heart of how we're set up, county law and municipal home rule law, as well as defining our powers within. Next slide. So the county law, it's called the county law, but this is a state law called the county law, right? Interesting enough, and we'll go to in 5 minutes, we'll talk about this, does not have any provisions for an elected executive. So a lot of your counties will have a county executive form of government that's not within county law. Well, county law, it was set up and structured for when counties back in the day were all board of supervisors, and we'll talk about that in a second, what a board of supervisors is, but really a town form of government where you get elected and you become to a county structure. County law talks about the powers of the board of supervisors. Their biggest power, they can create local law, they can create resolutions, they can pass budgets, they are going to oversee all the departments. It's a ton of power with the Board of Supervisors, and each under county law must elect a chair. That's why each county has, you've got your legislative board, or your Board of Supervisors, and then a chair that must be elected, typically under county law every year. That can also be changed and tweaked, as we'll talk about a little bit. But so county law also has really the powers and duties it lays out for a lot of positions and what they can and can't do. It talks not just about the board, it talks about the clerk of the board, the county attorneys in there, and the term and their function, the sheriff, your DA, your public defender. If you're looking for definitions and parameters and roles on each, it's going to be found for each of these different department heads. It's going to be found under state county law. Next slide, Jeanette. So while county law talks a lot about the structure, municipal home rule talks about the powers and the ability and how we're going to adopt and amend local laws. Your powers and duties of all different officers, it helps define those as well. The actual function on how to adopt your laws, your local laws. You got to get that right? You got to put out notice to the people. You need to put out proper notice to each other legislator. That is going to be all governed under municipal home rule law and discussed how it's done there. Real quick, like a side tangent. I do get this question from time to time of what so local laws, you can really pass anything. It's a pretty strong power. However, couple caveats to that. You can't preempt the state constitution, the federal constitution, or state law that already speaks on a statewide issue. Other than that, you really have a lot of power to pass local laws. I mean, it was just, for example, you think of a lot of things that maybe are national or certainly statewide issues, like texting while driving. When I first started at NISAC, it was legal in New York to text while driving. There were a lot of accidents, and it was counties that started passing no texting while driving in our county. This is they're putting liability on people and getting I think at that time cell phone companies did not like these local laws, and trying to say that we didn't have the right to do that. We did, and we passed these, and then the state sees they're good ideas and they end up adopting it statewide. So I mean, you do have a lot of power with that. You even have the power with local laws for criminal sanctions. It is only you cannot do with your local laws anything that would put someone in prison. So over a year, the harshest penalty you can have with any criminal sanction is 1 year or less. So there's parameters such as that. And quickly too, a difference between a resolution and a local law is really just length of stay. I mean, local laws stay until another local law preempts it, or a state law preempts it. It just lasts forever. A resolution is supposed to be more short in time, such as your budget is passed by resolution. And so there's just different ways, and under municipal home rule law, they get introduced and passed. Next slide. So county charter law. This is the law that governs how we can create a charter. So what's a county charter? County charter is kind of like, not every county has one, but it's like our state constitution. It's a county constitution. It is a way that we can totally reorganize, and we can do a lot of different things with county charters. We can set up how a county functions. In large part, what we can do, this has to go to referendum. If you ever do a county charter, or you want to change how your charter runs, it needs to go to referendum of the people. Now, you can change anything you want, but you still, again, remember the state constitution, you have to provide for a legislative body. But this is where we get county executive form of government, quite often through charter law, because when you're starting to make large changes, when you're not just making a couple tweaks that you can do for local law, or even ask for the state to make the change, you can make, if you need to go to referendum and make a whole cloth, we're going to adopt this whole thing, that can be preferred. When you are creating or getting rid of powers and duties of an elected official or multiple ones, it needs to go to referendum anyway. And it has so many domino effects that you might consider going to a charter at this point and just changing it all there, because it has to go to referendum anyway. Putting it out, Montgomery County did this relatively recently, and created the county executive form of government. Next slide. Talked about some of this. Now already that first it starts with the resolution from the legislative body, but it can also be done by petition of voters. The voters can force this question to the legislative body. Now, if you'd like a charter, the charter may be drafted by the legislative body, or you can get a committee, and a charter commission is often appointed for the purpose of drafting this to still look independent, but they should, you can create who should be on that charter commission. As we talked about before, once you establish and it gets adopted, any repeal or amendment, all of those are subject to referendum. So that's why I said this is analogous to the state constitution. It's hard sometimes it is advantageous to do a charter because you can make a lot of changes all at once, but once you're in, you're pretty locked in. It's to make substantial changes, it takes a bit. Next slide. So let's go into county organization. As you see here, 23 counties have adopted a county charter form with elected executives. Montgomery, as we just talked about, did in 2012, Ulster in 2009. So what is an executive kind of government? It's really very similar to the way the state's set up. You've got your county legislature with this form of government. They can pass local laws and resolutions. But now with an executive, it's an elected position. They get also a crack at the local laws. Now you're going much like the state has to go to the governor. They can veto those local laws. It's another step of government. They're also the executive, much like the governor is, and they're in charge of the different agencies, not elected agencies, not the sheriff, but they have oversight over the other executives branches, your real property tax director, your finance office, things like of that nature. It's going to be under the county attorney's office, under the county executive's purview. 16 of our counties still have the board of supervisors structure. So that is it's a two-hat type of government system. You've got your town, so look at like Saratoga. Your town, one runs for in Clifton Park. They run to become the supervisor of Clifton Park. Automatically, when they win that election, they get on the county's board of supervisors. So while they have a town function, they also sit on the board of supervisors that has all the same powers of a county legislature, and the parameters within that board of supervisors are going to be the town line itself, and we'll talk later. It's still going to have a one person, one vote. But now 40 counties, through whether it be charter, alternate form of government, they have elected to have a county legislature separate from your board of supervisor structure. So now these are district lines that are drawn, and they don't function, they have a separate function from the town, and while often they'll be working together, separately elected officials, same area, potentially, districts can go over the town lines, and they're separately elected. Some of these forms are going to also have executives, some won't. You're going to have just a chair. Board of supervisors are going to have a chair. Some county legislatures, they're all going to have a chair. But some, that's where the buck stops with the local laws. it gets introduced, passed to the floor by the chair, passed by the body, and it becomes law. Then there's one county with a board of representatives. Next slide, Jeanette. So what's in the name? Legislator, and we talked about some of this. The supervisors, you're there as the town. Here's the important thing on this is the last bullet point. So if I'm elected I'm in Niskayuna right now, and although they've got a different form, but let's assume it's a board of supervisors in the town of Niskayuna, it has, when I have my county function, it's under federal law. Your vote has to be weighted by share of county population. So what does that mean? One person, one vote. So if I live in a town of 50,000 and the town next to me has 100,000, that on a county level, that supervisor to the right of me should have twice the voting power that I have. Now, every 10 years of the census, we need to readjust this accordingly, and we are at that time right now. So you might be seeing some of that in the near future, depending on the plus minus of where your county went. Next slide. A legislator has the same function as your board of supervisors. You also have but you're not elected on the town level, right? You're elected through your districts within your county. You also have a one person, one vote requirement, and that's based on the drawn lines of the district. And now, once those are established, though, you can have weighted vote as well. So it can be lines of a legislature. And then the population shifts, and where it was even before, now it's not. You can either move those district lines, or you can make a hybrid system now of to have a weighted vote within those districts as well. Next slide. These show how they're all, again, same, very similar functions, just a different structure. They all serve the legislative body of the county. They all allow to enact and repeal local laws. They can levy taxes and oversee and have control of the budget process, which is huge. And those without a county executive form of government, they also have direct oversight to the county employees and how they function. Next. So the county executives, we talked a lot about this already, so we can go through this quickly. They're going to be the chief budget officer of the county. This is, again, think of like the governor of the county. You can veto the actions of the legislature. This is going to be made usually with a charter form of government. And there's different reasons why a county may or may not want a county executive. Some counties are small enough that they feel, our chair, we've got enough face-to-face with the public, with our chair, with our local representatives. It's usually the larger counties, on the most part, that do a county executive form of government. Just so that when it's such a large population, there's a face to that county, that kind of a buck stops here sort of thing, an elected official, where both whether it be the state representatives can go to the press, the people know that this is who represents our county on some of these matters, and it can have a more organized feel to it when a county starts getting larger. Next. There are a lot of your counties. 22 have a county administrator, 11 have county managers. These are basically the same. The county manager, county administrator, kind of similar function, different name. You can create these through charter. You can also just do this by local law. So what are they? I mean, I said earlier that the legislature, the non-county executive legislators and board of supervisors, you have that function of the day-to-day responsibilities of each of your departments. Your department, everything we talked about before, Department of Health, your real property tax director office, your veterans. This can become a lot to manage. especially the day-to-day operations for a legislature or a chair. A lot of counties have elected to create these positions and delegate some of that power. That's why you can create a county legislator, a county administrator through power of local law. You don't need a referendum for this because they're not elected officials, and they're not taking those powers. You're delegating these powers to them. They work for you on behalf of the county. Next. So just talked a lot about this, and one of their biggest, I mean, they have a ton of functions, but and really with personnel and day-to-day operations, biggest thing is in this time of year, they prepare the budget. They're your budget operators, and they submit it to, they do proposals to you at the legislative body for adoption, and they do the budget for everything. So although I said before the elected officials can be on their own, like the sheriffs run their own department, the legislative body still submits their budget, and it's usually the manager or the admin that plays a huge role in that, making sure the budget functions. Next. Legislative administration. So that this is ones that have not adopted a county manager. These are usually your smaller counties, right? That you have, if you only have a few hundred county employees and the chair, or they get to know each department head, they understand their needs, they can go straight to the chair and straight to the legislature, and then you let those department heads themselves run each department while going to the chair and communicating their needs and what they'll need to do for those services. A strong committee system is usually established with this. So you'll have subcommittees that deal with the Department of Health within your legislature that talks to them more regularly, more frequently, because when you have this kind of system, your legislature's not there every day, right? They're all part-time positions, and so you only meet once or twice a month. You want to make sure that you might have subcommittees that are focusing and they can help out that local health department on a quick call or need be. Next. Changing our big thing when we talked about solvent, so we'll go quickly again. We all have the power to change how we do any of the ones we just talked about. You can make your county one of any of those forms, and even go back if you think you made a mistake, right, and go to a different form of county government. Ultimately, you need to provide these services. How you form your structure to do so are come with how we talked about before. And a lot you can do by local law, some you can do by creating a charter. The one thing we cannot do is we cannot, by local law, we cannot abolish or diminish the powers of an elected official without a referendum of the people. So what does that mean? It means a lot, but again, let's call me if we get those questions. Does that mean, so for a sheriff, let's say, I mean, I would argue one could not, just by local law, and maybe even more because they're constitutionally protected, you couldn't say you've lost your policing powers, right? Like you can't, they're their own elected officials. They have their own powers and duties. That would be a diminishing their power if one tried to unilaterally pass something like that. But could they unilaterally change? Is a salary a power? Is the term of office, right? We always get that question. It's a 4-year window. Could we make it a 3? There's different things you may or may not do that might run into. Is this diminishing their power or not? And can we do this by local law, or does this need to go to referendum? Next, we're almost done. Oh, I think we're done. Questions. I covered a lot. Sorry, I just talked for 55 minutes. That was longer than I wanted to go. But in a lot of broad stuff. So you might not have specific questions, but if you think of anything in these worlds that we covered, we can get much more detailed, and just reach out to us anytime. And I hope that was at least a helpful overview of places to go and general thoughts of how a county government's structured and formed.
Thank
Jen,
you so much, Patrick.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Again, a recording of this program, as well as a copy of the slide deck, will be found on NYSEC's website under Education, Webinars. Just look for this title and you'll see 2 links to those documents. Thank you so much for joining us today.